The auditorium lights dimmed, but the tension inside the Washington Policy Forum only grew brighter. Reporters leaned forward, sensing a confrontation brewing long before the microphones even turned on. In the front row sat lawmakers, activists, and influencers from every corner of the political spectrum, each waiting for the moment everyone knew was coming. Jonathan Roumie stepped onto the stage with his characteristic quiet presence, the silver cross on his necklace catching the glow of the overhead spotlight. He adjusted the mic, offered a brief nod to the audience, and took his seat. He wasn't here to fight, but he wasn't here to fold either. Across from him sat Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, leaning back in her chair with a knowing smile as if she'd already prepared the knockout blow. The moderator hadn't even finished introductions when Omar leaned toward her mic and said loudly enough for everyone in the hall to hear, "I don't know why we pretend this is a debate. Mr. Roumie's entire worldview is shaped entirely by his religion. He can't think for himself." The room exploded. Gasps, whispers, a few scattered wows. Even the moderator froze, unsure whether to intervene. Jonathan didn't flinch. He blinked once, twice, then slowly folded his hands in his lap. The picture of composure, Omar continued, capitalizing on the shockwave she'd unleashed. America needs voices who aren't trapped in old beliefs, people who don't confuse conviction with sermons. Now the crowd shifted from shock to discomfort. Phones were raised, cameras zoomed in. A moment that could go viral was forming in real time. Jonathan finally leaned forward, his voice steady but razor sharp. "Congresswoman, you attack my faith as if it's a weakness. But let me remind you, this country was built by people who prayed before they acted, who believed before they spoke, and who stood firm even when mocked for it." That line alone shifted the energy like the temperature in the room jumped 5 degrees. Omar scoffed, "So predictable." But the audience didn't agree. A ripple of applause moved through the front rows. Jonathan continued, eyes locked on Omar. "You say I can't think for myself, yet here you are trying to shame millions of Americans who live by their faith every day. If defending them makes me predictable, then I'll gladly stay predictable." The applause grew louder. Cameras flashed. The moderator cleared his throat, realizing he had lost control of the room. But Jonathan wasn't done. He leaned slightly closer to his mic, lowering his voice just enough to make everyone lean in. "And if your opening argument is insulting someone's religion instead of challenging their perspective, maybe you're the one who's out of arguments." The crowd roared. The eruption shook the stage. Even the moderator couldn't hide the smirk creeping across his face. Omar stiffened, her smile evaporating. She hadn't expected this. She had thrown the first punch, only to be knocked off balance before round one even officially began. And just like that, the debate had transformed. No longer Omar versus Roumie, it was Omar versus the entire room. And Jonathan knew it. The studio lights burned hotter than usual. The crowd wasn't just awake, they were waiting. Word had leaked on social media that Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, planned to confront Jonathan directly tonight, and every seat in the building had been claimed long before the cameras rolled. Producers whispered to each other behind the glass wall, nervously watching the two individuals seated just feet apart, but ideologically miles away. Ilhan leaned slightly forward, adjusting her microphone, her expression a careful mix of frustration and confidence. "Mr. Roumie," she began, her tone slow and deliberate, "you don't get to lecture America about religious freedom when your entire public persona seems built on fueling division with selective outrage." The crowd stirred. Jonathan didn't move, didn't blink. He kept his hands calmly folded on the table, waiting. Ilhan pressed on, gaining momentum. "You talk about Christianity like it belongs to one ideology. You weaponize faith. People like me, Muslims, immigrants, are often dismissed or targeted by such rhetoric." And honestly, she shook her head, almost performing for the audience. "It's hypocritical. You use religion when it benefits you and silence it when someone else tries to practice theirs." A few in the audience nodded, a few booed, many just waited. Jonathan lifted his gaze, slow, controlled, unbothered. Ilhan continued, sensing the moment. "You preach about American values, yet you attack anyone whose beliefs differ even slightly from your own. So tell us," she spread her hands theatrically, "what gives you the right to act like you're the moral referee of this country?" A producer mouthed, "Oh boy," off camera. Finally, Jonathan leaned forward. His voice was soft, but sharp enough to cut through the noise. "Congresswoman Omar," he said, "I grew up in a place where my family prayed for strength, not power. My faith wasn't a career strategy, it was survival." The room quieted. And let me correct something, Jonathan continued, his tone tightening. I have never attacked you for being Muslim. What I have criticized is your habit of insulting the very country that gave you freedom and a platform. Ilhan's eyes narrowed. Jonathan didn't stop. You accuse me of weaponizing religion, but you're the one who brought up my faith tonight, not me. You mentioned Christianity more times in the last 2 minutes than I did in this entire show. A ripple moved through the audience. Then Jonathan delivered the line that made the room shift. And here's the difference between us, Congresswoman. I don't fear your religion, but you clearly fear mine. Gasps, murmurs, a few scattered claps. Ilhan stiffened, caught between anger and shock. Jonathan finished, voice steady as steel. Faith isn't the problem. What you call division is actually just me refusing to apologize for loving my country and standing by my beliefs. If that bothers you, maybe the issue isn't religion. Maybe it's resentment. The moderator looked stunned. The audience exploded into applause. Even the camera operators froze before remembering to keep rolling, and Ilhan Omar, for the first time that night, had no response ready. The room shifted the second Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, leaned forward, her tone sharpening as cameras zoomed in like predators catching a scent. People like you, Ilhan said, eyes narrowing at Jonathan, weaponize faith to divide this country. Hiding behind a cross doesn't make your persona holy. Gasps rippled across the audience. A producer backstage muttered, "Oh, she went there." The moderator froze, unsure whether to step in or let the confrontation explode on its own. Jonathan didn't flinch. He sat still, hands folded, posture straight, eyes locked on Ilhan, as if waiting for her to finish swinging before delivering the knockout. The cross on his lapel caught the stage lights, glowing just enough to annoy his opponent even more. Ilhan pushed further. If your entire identity crumbles the moment someone questions your religion, maybe it wasn't faith, maybe it was propaganda. A few audience members clapped, mostly younger activists in the back row, but the rest stayed eerily silent, watching, waiting for Jonathan to strike. They'd seen this look on him before, the calm before he dropped something lethal. Jonathan leaned into his mic slowly, almost theatrically. "Congresswoman," he began, voice steady, "you've spent years attacking this country, its borders, its history, and yes, its faith. So forgive me if I don't take spiritual advice from someone who mocks the values Americans actually live by." The crowd murmured louder this time. He wasn't yelling, he didn't need to. Ilhan tried to interrupt. "You're twisting." But Jonathan raised one finger. "Oh, I'm not done, sucker." The moderator instinctively leaned back. "You said I hide behind my cross," Jonathan continued, "but I think the real issue is you don't understand why Americans hold on to theirs. It's not a prop, it's not a costume, it's hope, the same hope that gave your family a future here when this nation opened its arms to you." That landed like a strike to the ribs. Even those who disagreed with Jonathan felt the tremor. Ilhan blinked rapidly, trying to recover. "So now you're implying I should be grateful enough to stay quiet?" Jonathan shook his head. "No, I'm saying maybe show some respect to the freedoms that allow both of us to sit on this stage. Freedom of speech, freedom of belief, freedom of religion. You exercise yours loudly every day, but mine offends you the moment you see it." The audience erupted, some cheering, others stunned into silence. Even the moderator mouthed, "Wow," under his breath. Ilhan opened her mouth to fire back, but this time the room wasn't with her. The shift was visible. Shoulders turned toward Jonathan, cameras angled in his direction, social media already exploding with clips. Jonathan delivered the final hit of the moment. "I'm not hiding behind my faith. I'm standing on it." And that seems to be the problem for people who want every American belief, except theirs, shut down. Every word echoed, and Ilhan Omar, for the first time that night, had no immediate comeback. The tension inside the congressional forum thickened like storm air before lightning. The moderator shifted nervously, pretending to shuffle papers while actually buying time. No one expected Jonathan to fire back with such precision. But Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, wasn't finished. She leaned forward again, voice sharpened into a political blade. "You weaponize faith," Ilhan said, chin lifted as camera zoomed in. "People like you hide behind religion to justify division." A few progressive attendees clapped loudly, deliberately. They wanted a moment, something viral, something that made Jonathan look small. But Jonathan didn't shrink. He sat completely still, shoulders squared, hands folded. His eyes didn't blink, didn't flinch. He waited for the applause to die down. And then he did something that shifted the entire atmosphere. He stood up slowly, purposefully. The crowd fell into a curious hush. Jonathan placed his hand on the table, leaned slightly forward, and spoke with a tone so steady it felt like a courtroom verdict. Congresswoman, you don't get to decide what my faith means. You don't get to rewrite the Constitution because you're uncomfortable with someone who actually believes in something. A ripple moved through the audience. Soft gasps first, then a wave of murmurs. Ilhan didn't expect him to rise. Not literally, not figuratively. Jonathan continued, his voice projecting without raising the volume. You accuse me of division. You just attacked millions of Americans who pray, who hold on to faith to survive hardships, who lost their who lost family members, who still choose hope over bitterness. Ilhan shifted in her seat for the first time. Jonathan pressed harder. If you call that weaponizing religion, then maybe the issue isn't our faith. Maybe it's your discomfort with people who don't agree with your worldview. A man in the back clapped once, loud. Another joined, then three more. Ilhan looked around, stunned that the room she assumed was hers was beginning to tilt. Jonathan stepped closer to his microphone. I will never apologize for my faith. Not here, not anywhere. He raised his hand slightly, gesturing to the crowd. And judging by this room, I'm not the only one tired of being told to shut up about it. The applause now was undeniable, rolling, building, spreading across the auditorium like a spark catching dry grass. The moderator sat frozen. Ilhan stared, caught between anger and disbelief. Jonathan sat back down with absolute calm, his expression composed. But the room was no longer neutral. It was his. Ilhan Omar's last jab, your faith is just a personal shield, still hung in the air like smoke after a grenade. The studio went silent, the audience unsure whether they had just witnessed a crossing of a line. Even the moderator froze, eyes wide, sensing that the moment had slipped beyond standard political sparring. Jonathan didn't rush to respond. He stood perfectly still, hands on the podium, the cross around his neck, catching the studio lights almost glowing. He let the silence stretch just long enough for Ilhan to think she'd scored, just long enough for viewers at home to lean closer, just long enough for tension to coil so tightly it was ready to snap. Then Jonathan looked up, calm, steady, unshaken. Congresswoman Omar, he said, his voice low but carrying through every inch of the room. You didn't attack my perspective. You attacked my faith, and that tells me everything about the weakness of your argument. A rumble spread through the crowd, soft gasps, shifting chairs. Jonathan took a step forward. You claim faith is a shield. No, faith is why millions of Americans get up every day and keep going. Faith is why families survive hardship. Faith is why this country exists at all. Ilhan's smirk faded. Jonathan didn't stop. You don't have to share my beliefs. That's the beauty of America. But what you can't do is shame people for having them. A wave of applause erupted, small at first, then swelling as more people rose from their seats. Ilhan tried to interject. I didn't shame you. Yes, you did, Jonathan snapped back. Not angry, but precise. And you've done it to millions who think like me. But here's the difference. We don't hide our values when they become inconvenient. Ilhan blinked, caught off guard. Jonathan stepped fully towards center stage now, owning the room. You attacked my faith because you couldn't attack my conviction. And when someone goes after faith instead of reason, it means they've already lost the debate. The audience roared. Cheers, whistles, applause, shaking the studio. Even the moderator couldn't hide a stunned smile. Jonathan finished with a blow that would replay online for days. You say my faith is a shield. Maybe it is, but tonight it looks like the only shield here that held up was mine. Ilhan looked down. The crowd stood, and Jonathan Roumie, calm, unwavering, owned the moment completely. Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, stood rigid behind her podium, fingers wrapped so tightly around her notes that the edges began to bend. She hadn't expected the audience to shift. She hadn't expected Jonathan's composure to hold, and she certainly hadn't expected her own attack on Jonathan's faith to backfire so violently. But the momentum was gone. Jonathan had taken it, shaped it, and now wielded it like a blade. The moderator cleared his throat. Representative Omar, is there anything you'd like to clarify? Ilhan leaned toward the mic, eyes narrowing. Yes, she said sharply. Faith is a personal choice, but using it as a public shield, hiding behind it to justify harmful ideology is dangerous. That's what Mr. Roumie is doing. The room tightened, a few murmurs, a few raised eyebrows. It wasn't landing the way she hoped. Jonathan took one slow step forward, his silver cross glinting beneath the bright studio lights, not as an ornament, but as a declaration. Representative Omar, he began, voice low but carrying the calm certainty of someone who'd been underestimated one time too many. The only person attacking faith tonight is you. Ilhan blinked, taken aback. Jonathan continued, his tone sharpening like a turning key. You didn't challenge my perspective. You didn't challenge my arguments. You challenged my belief in God. And you did it because you thought the audience would cheer you for it. The crowd shifted. Guilt, anger, curiosity, all mixing into a single hum. Here's the truth, Jonathan said. I don't use my faith to shield anything. I use it to guide me. That's what faith is supposed to do. And millions of Americans, he swept his hand across the crowd, know exactly what I mean. The applause hit suddenly, loud and rolling. Ilhan's jaw tensed. Faith doesn't excuse bigotry. No, Jonathan shot back. And calling disagreement bigotry doesn't excuse your hostility toward Christianity. That one landed like a hammer. The moderators froze. The audience gasped. Ilhan's expression cracked. Jonathan pressed forward, voice growing stronger. You accuse me of hiding behind religion, but you're the one weaponizing it, twisting it into an attack the moment you run out of reasoned arguments. That's not bravery, Representative. His tone hardened. That's insecurity. Even the camera crew glanced at each other. Ilhan tried to recover. You're misrepresenting. No, Jonathan said softly. I'm exposing silence. Real silence. The kind that fills a room right before the crowd chooses sides. Jonathan stepped fully into the spotlight now, shoulders squared, expression unwavering. My faith isn't a costume. It's not a prop, and it certainly isn't something I'm going to apologize for because it makes you uncomfortable. A roar of applause erupted louder than anything so far. People rose from their seats. Even those who disagreed with him politically couldn't deny the force of the moment. Ilhan Omar stood frozen, caught, cornered, suddenly aware that she had become the villain in her own attack. Jonathan let the applause swell before finishing, his voice calm and devastating. You attacked my faith to weaken me, but you just reminded America why I'll never back down. Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, wasn't finished. The moment the moderator tried moving on, she leaned forward, planting her elbows on the desk as if she owned the stage. Her voice sharpened, dripping with the kind of superiority she wielded whenever she thought she had the moral high ground. Mr. Roumie, she said, people like you hide it behind religion. You weaponize faith to justify harmful narratives. You claim to represent morality, yet everything you support tears communities apart. Maybe instead of quoting scripture, you should learn empathy. A few of Ilhan's supporters clapped, but it sounded thin, forced. The rest of the room tensed, sensing she had gone too far. Jonathan did not blink. If anything, his stillness made the tension worse, like the silence right before lightning hits the ground. He tilted his head slightly. You're really going to lecture me about empathy? He asked softly. Ilhan smirked. Someone needs to? Jonathan stepped forward, placing both hands on the table, and his voice dropped into a calm, dangerous cadence that instantly silenced the room. Congresswoman, my faith doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me blind. And it definitely doesn't make me hateful. My faith is the reason I advocate for families, for children, for communities, struggling with the very political rhetoric you push. Ilhan shifted in her seat. Jonathan continued, his voice stronger now. You accuse me of weaponizing religion, but the only person attacking anyone's faith here is you. A low ripple spread across the audience. People turned their heads toward Ilhan, waiting to see how she would respond. You want to talk empathy, Jonathan said? Let's talk about the parents I've heard from who can't afford groceries. The families who lock their doors at 400 p.m. because crime is out of control. The kids failing out of schools that are more focused on activist politics than reading and math. Ilhan opened her mouth, but she couldn't get a word in. Jonathan pressed harder. You sit in Congress blaming America for everything wrong in the world. You attack its values, its history, and now you attack my faith simply because it threatens your narrative. The room erupted. Cheers, applause, whistles. Ilhan's face tightened. Jonathan pointed gently toward her, not aggressively, but with unmistakable precision. My religion doesn't hurt this country, but your rhetoric, your division, your constant hostility toward the very nation that gave you opportunity, that hurts far more than any verse I could ever quote. Ilhan's smirk vanished. Jonathan delivered the final blow like a clean, undeniable truth. You don't get to shame me for loving my faith. You don't get to shame me for loving my country. And you definitely don't get to shame me for standing up to you. The crowd erupted, this time louder than at any moment so far. Ilhan leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. For the first time all night, she looked genuinely rattled. Jonathan remained standing, the studio lights catching the small cross on his necklace. No longer just an accessory, but a declaration. Tonight, it wasn't a politician Ilhan was fighting. It was conviction, and she was losing. For a brief second, the entire congressional forum froze. Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, glaring across the stage, the audience lurching forward in their seats, cameras swinging to capture whatever would happen next. Jonathan stood perfectly still, shoulders squared, chin lifted, his cross glinting beneath the lights. Not as a symbol of fragility, but as a warning. Ilhan tried to regain control, her tone sharp and clipped. "Americans are tired," she declared, "of people like you using religion as a shield for intolerance." The crowd stirred. A few claps from Ilhan's corner. Weak, forced. Most people simply waited. Jonathan took a slow breath, his fingers brushing the edge of the podium. He knew this was the moment, the line that would either break the debate or break Ilhan. And when he finally spoke, his voice was steady, unwavering, sharper than anything he'd said all night. "Congresswoman," Jonathan replied, "I don't use my faith as a shield. I use it as a compass, something you might want to try, because your politics clearly aren't guiding you anywhere." A gasp rolled through the audience like a shockwave. Ilhan blinked hard, thrown off rhythm. Jonathan didn't let the silence linger. "You attacked my religion," he continued, "as if Americans haven't watched you weaponize your own every time you're criticized. You don't get to lecture me on faith, and you don't get to insult millions of Christians while pretending to be the victim." Ilhan leaned forward, her voice rising. "I'm not pretending," but Jonathan wasn't finished. Not remotely. "You know what Americans are tired of," he said, raising his voice just enough to cut clean through Ilhan's attempt to interrupt. "They're tired of politicians who tear the country apart and then act shocked when someone calls them out. They're tired of hearing you blame America for everything wrong in the world, while you enjoy every benefit that this nation gives you." The room erupted. Cheers, applause. Even staffers near the wall couldn't hide their reaction. Jonathan stepped closer, delivering the strike with perfect precision. "You don't hate my religion, Congresswoman. You hate that someone won't back down from you." Ilhan froze. No comeback, no smirk, nothing. Jonathan's final line landed like a hammer. "You attacked my faith. I defended it. And by the sound of this room, America just chose who they believe." The crowd roared so loud that even Ilhan's microphone couldn't drown it out. Jonathan didn't smile. He simply stood there calm, confident, unshaken, and the night officially became his. The moment the cameras cut back from commercial, Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, looked like she was ready to strike again, hands gripping the edge of the panel table, jaw tight, eyes burning with that same defiance she had walked in with. She wasn't just angry, she was embarrassed. Jonathan Roumie had flipped the room, flipped the narrative, and most painfully flipped her attempt to shame Jonathan's faith into a national spectacle of Ilhan's own intolerance. But Ilhan wasn't done. "Mr. Roumie," she snapped, voice trembling with fury, "you weaponize religion. You hide behind the Bible to justify your public statements. That's not faith, that's manipulation. And I'm tired of you acting like your faith makes you superior to the rest of us." The liberal side of the audience clapped. Weak, scattered, almost ashamed. Even they knew the line crossed a line. Jonathan didn't even blink. He leaned in, his voice steady as steel. "My faith doesn't make me superior," he said. "It makes me accountable." That single sentence hit harder than any shout could have. The room froze. Even Ilhan's mouth tightened, unsure how to respond. Jonathan continued, his voice low but powerful. "You attack Christianity every time you feel cornered, but when anyone questions your beliefs, you call it bigotry. You can't have it both ways, Congresswoman." A ripple went through the crowd, murmurs turning into open applause. Ilhan slammed her hand on the table. "Don't twist this. I'm calling out extremism." Jonathan didn't raise his voice. He simply spoke truth. "No, you're calling out anything that disagrees with you, and tonight you miscalculated badly." The audience roared again. Jonathan pressed forward sharper now. "You said I'm hiding behind the Bible, but I'm not hiding. I'm standing. I'm standing on the principles that built this nation. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and yes, freedom to defend faith without being mocked by an elected official." Ilhan opened her mouth, but Jonathan didn't let her. "You claim to defend minorities," Jonathan said. Yet you mock Christians publicly and think you deserve applause for it. But here's the truth. Millions of Christians across America heard you tonight, and they're tired of being treated like their beliefs make them villains. The crowd erupted into a standing ovation. Even the moderates stood. Even some liberals looked conflicted. Ilhan sat there, stunned, eyes blinking rapidly, as if realizing she had just become the story, not Jonathan. Producers behind the glass window leaned toward each other, whispering frantic updates as social media notifications blinked non-stop on their monitors. Cross-attack. Roumie destroys Ilhan. Faith is not bigotry. All trending within minutes. Ilhan could feel it. Jonathan wasn't just winning the debate, he was defining the narrative. Jonathan finished the moment with the line that would dominate every headline the next morning. You didn't attack my argument, Congresswoman. You attacked my faith. And that says everything about your agenda and nothing about mine. The crowd went wild. Ilhan looked down, and Jonathan sat back, calm, victorious, untouched. He hadn't just defended himself, he had defended millions. And that wasn't the final sentence. But now everyone knew. Ilhan had attacked the wrong person. The studio had never been louder. Cheers shook the rafters as Ilhan Omar, a member of the House of Representatives, stood frozen at her podium, gripping the edges like the floor beneath her might collapse. Jonathan didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't revel in the applause exploding around him. He simply stood there, calm, steady, unshaken, holding the weight of the moment like he had been preparing for it his entire life. Ilhan tried to recover, forced a smile, and leaned toward her microphone. You think one emotional line makes you right? She said, though her voice trembled. You think quoting your religion gives you authority here? This is politics, not Sunday school. But the crowd wasn't with her anymore. Jonathan stepped forward slowly, each heel click echoing through the tension-filled air. When he spoke, the room fell into a silence so sharp it felt like a blade. No, Congresswoman, he said. I didn't win this moment because of my religion. I won it because you attacked millions of Americans who share it. You didn't come for me tonight. You came for them. I'm just the one standing here willing to say enough. A gasp rippled through the audience. Jonathan continued, his voice gaining strength. You claim to fight for tolerance, yet you mock anyone whose beliefs don't match yours. You preach compassion, but the second someone disagrees, you go for their identity. You go for their background. You go for their faith. That's not leadership. That's emotional manipulation dressed up as activism. Ilhan blinked hard as if trying to register every word being thrown at her with surgical precision. Jonathan didn't stop. You told me religion has no place in public life, he said, but millions of Americans live by their faith every single day. It guides their decisions, their families, their values, their love for this country. You don't get to strip them of that just because it makes you uncomfortable. A roar of applause erupted, deafening, rising like a wave across the studio. Jonathan raised his hand, signaling he wasn't finished. And you know what's most ironic, Congresswoman? You came to America for freedom, yet you stand here trying to shame those who use that same freedom to worship differently from you. If freedom only applies to people who think like you, then it's not freedom at all. Ilhan looked stunned, eyes wide, lips parted, but no words forming. It was the first time all night she had nothing left to fire back with. Jonathan delivered the final blow. Soft, but devastating. You attacked my faith. I answered with the Constitution because one of us still believes in protecting every American's freedom, not just the ones we agree with. The crowd went wild, standing, clapping, shouting Jonathan's name as Ilhan stepped back from her podium, rattled, shaken, defeated. Producers in the control room yelled over one another, scrambling to capture every second of the explosion happening on air. Clips were already being clipped, already heading to social media, already primed to go viral. Jonathan simply placed his microphone down. He didn't need to celebrate. The moment spoke louder than victory ever could. Because tonight wasn't just a debate. It was a national shift, a moment where a prominent voice stood against one of Washington's most aggressive critics and proved that conviction, clarity, and courage can dismantle rage and rhetoric in a single unforgettable strike. America wouldn't forget what happened tonight, and neither would Ilhan Omar. If you want to see more powerful takedowns, more deep dives into the culture war, and more unfiltered political confrontations just like this one, then make sure you smash that subscribe button right now. Did Jonathan Roumie nail it, or did Ilhan Omar have a point? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and hit the like button if you think conviction always wins over rhetoric. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.